of all, welcome everyone to Survive to Thrive. Gosh, I think we stopped counting them, but we've hosted a bunch of these discussions, and we're super excited to host today's discussion. My name is Nick Miller. I'm the executive director at the Venture College at Boise State. The Venture College is a program in the College of Innovation and Design at Boise State where we help students launch their ventures beyond the classroom. And really excited to have some students here today that we've worked with and we're getting to know on a few different fronts. One was through a program that the Venture College delivered, and the other was through a program that was delivered by Boise Startup Week. And that is a good segue to the co-host of our program here, as well as the co-chair of Boise Startup Week and the executive director of Trailhead, TM Rostigar.
Wow, I get my own segue. I like that. Thank you, Nick. It's good to be here with everyone. I'm really excited to get into the session and the Q&A. Just a bit of context here. The organization that I work for, Trailhead, hence the shirt, we just hosted the final to our program called You Lead Idaho, which is a pitch competition amongst high school teams. And they wrapped that up yesterday, and they're feverishly getting ready to participate in the Venture College's High School Idaho Entrepreneurial Challenge. And I literally just got off the Zoom with a couple of high school teams in rural Idaho as they're preparing their pitch deck, and I'm giving them Q&A feedback. And so this is just very relevant. They're a stage behind, if you will. They're not in college or at the university stage yet, but I always like to think of planting the seeds early in youth. And so today's discussion is just super relevant. Like I said, I just came off of a bunch of pitch presentations, so glad to be here with you.
Great. Yeah. Like I said, TM and I have hosted a bunch of these discussions. Today we'll be talking about student entrepreneurs. We have 3 student entrepreneurs with us. Specifically, we'll be talking about reverse pitch. The idea of, to be an entrepreneur, you don't necessarily need to come to the table with your own idea. Oftentimes it can be as simple as finding a problem to solve. And in both instances that we discussed today, that was facilitated where we brought industry partners, be they people from the building materials industry, from government, from nonprofits, and we had them talk about the problems they face. And then these innovators and entrepreneurs started to develop ideas to solve those problems. And as TM alluded to, we're looking further downstream with high school students and others. And between You Lead Idaho and High School IEC, it's one of many areas where the Venture College and Trailhead have the opportunity to collaborate. So maybe what I will do next is I'll introduce the student entrepreneurs that we have with us. They can introduce themselves a little bit as well, tell us where they go to school, what their background is. And then I know that TM and I have a bunch of questions. And as TM put into the chat, please do drop any questions that you have here. You've got them on the spot, so you can pose some questions, and we'll help get some answers out of them. So first, I'd like to introduce Alex and Cora Krentz. And I think the last time I talked to Alex and Cora, you had different last names, and now I notice you're sharing a last name. So I think there was a pretty momentous occasion between the last time we talked and now. So if I'm not mistaken, congratulations are in order. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, we got married about a month ago. Yeah, when we talked to you last night, we were engaged. And we got married.
Congratulations.
Wow, this just took an unexpected turn. This is going to be great.
Yeah. We actually met with the pitch competition and then really hit it off. No, just kidding. We didn't each other for a couple months.
But it could go either way. It could go by. I mean, the pitch competition could drive things apart, but we'll talk about that. That's actually interesting dynamic. But I'll dive into that.
Cool. Well, Alex and Cora, obviously, congratulations. It's super excited for you guys. What a exciting time in your life. And do you want to tell us just a little bit about how you participated in the Boise Startup Week Youth Innovation Challenge, the problem you solved, the idea you had? We'll obviously get into it deeper, but maybe just a quick overview.
Yeah. So I was kind of following Boise Startup Week and everything that they were doing. And then we heard about the reverse pitch competition, and I don't know, it just really resonated with us. And so we watched all the videos, and honestly, at first we worked really hard on INL's problem with the plastic, and helping motivate people industries to use less plastic. And we worked really hard on that one. We like emailed tons of people, and we were trying to figure out things with laws and stuff, but then we got kind of stuck. It didn't really go anywhere.
Hit a dead end on that one.
So we just gave up, and and then we did the City of Good challenge.
Yeah, and so Alex actually had the great idea of doing a book. So I guess before I talk about that, the City of Good, their problem is, so they give meals to students who don't have the support at home, the money to have meals on weekends. And they wanted to really connect these students with the community around them and help them really appreciate where their food is coming from and the people who volunteer and participate in this. So Alex had the great idea of making it kid-friendly, make a little comic book of sorts with all the people in it that helped make these meals for these kids, and really showcase them as the heroes that they are. And it was, I don't know, I thought it was a great idea, so we just kind of rolled with it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love that. And I like especially that you're solving a problem for a nonprofit, but also serving kids as well. And in full disclosure, I'm a board member of that nonprofit, so it strikes an even different importance for me. Thank you, Alex and Cora, and we'll dig it a little bit more into your experience as well as we move on. Next up, I'd like to introduce Lyndsay Watkins. Lyndsay is with HAUS and is a University of Idaho student. And I should also mention Alex and Cora are at BYU, Idaho. And so Lyndsay, would you tell us a little bit about HAUS, the problem that you solved, and just a quick overview of the venture that you're building?
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, so we started out, like Nick said, it's a reverse pitch competition. So we selected a problem from a problem list of about 30 issues from the construction industry by different folks that are a part of the construction industry. So Eric Parrish of Midwest was our problem sponsor. And he had this issue of, when you have an issue within a wall, you need to like rip out drywall and even to locate the problem, versus in a car, you can just pop the hood, figure out what's wrong, and easily plug in parts to fix it. So me and my other teammates, 3 of which are Masters of Architecture students like myself at U of I, and then we had 1 mechanical engineer who was an undergrad. But so basically we worked on that issue and came up with a home access utility system, which is HAUS. And it's essentially a structural channel that runs along the bottom of a typical residential wood frame wall, and easily can be attached in along the floor line and along the wall. So yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was about ease of construction on the job site, but it was also about empowering the homeowner at the same time. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Lyndsay. And I guess maybe what I would do is start with you. Alex and Cora talk a little bit about the trial and error phase of, testing one problem, finding, that maybe skill set wasn't oriented towards it, or the problem was, intractable, and find a problem that maybe is more appropriate. Tell us about, one, your journey and finding the problem. You said, 30 or so problems. And then 2, you are actively building this company, you're pursuing it. How how common is that experience, or maybe uncommon is that experience to be an aspiring entrepreneur in an architecture program? How did that feel as you launched?
Yeah, so yeah, that's kind of a big question, I think. But we did, my teammates and I did spend like 2 or 3 days of the 7-week challenge deciding on a problem, actually, because, as architects, I think it was inherent for us to try and go for the bigger problems like affordable housing with kind of that more social aspect that we were drawn to. But at the end of the day, and especially with Evan, our mechanical engineer, we really wanted the opportunity to look at something that was specific to the construction industry. So, look at it with kind of these more detailed eyes. And also just to, Boise is becoming kind of this hub for construction in the nation. And so we wanted to, kind of push for that in an offhanded way. And so I think that was a big piece of what we thought about along the way. But ultimately we ended up just, we all showed up to like our first and second meeting together with a bunch of drawings on like trace paper and just like scratched out, and everybody's, it was gentle arguing about which problem to pick. But yeah, I think overall we were really able to, iterate a lot because we had, 5 team members. And, for an architecture student, 7 days is a lifetime. I mean, you can crank out so much stuff by that time. So, it was a really interesting way to do it in that big group setting versus as an individual. And so from there, I mean, my other classmates, I'm the furthest along. I'm in my last semester of my master's program. So, I was like, I can't let this idea go. Like, this is just too great, and I just see its applicability too well. And so, especially, kind of with my dad and my family being like loving to fix things and like figure out solutions for things. So I was like, yeah, I like have to push this. And so, yeah, exploring that. So my other classmates all, they're like in the middle of their education of their master's. So they all kind of had to step aside from this for a while. But kind of during break and the last couple of weeks, and after the competition, I've just been trying to reach out to folks in the construction industry, builders and contractors, and, whoever I'm able to get a hold of, and just get a ton of feedback. And I think the Venture College has been so good about checking in with me and giving me resources to be able to do that. And just really connecting with those people that I can have those conversations with. And so I think the big question that I'm kind of working towards in these interviews and this feedback implementation phase, and I guess feasibility phase, is, when was the last big game changer in the construction industry? And, what of those qualities made it something that we were like, we need to change the status quo and start doing it differently? And from there, what qualities of that do I see in this project, and how can I kind of amp those up? So yeah, hopefully that's full circle enough for you.
Yeah, thank you for that perspective. And you all certainly picked a big problem, and I admire your perseverance. And I think what I hear you saying is moving into that, customer discovery mode is certainly a big part of it. And part of, I think, what the benefit for an entrepreneur is of participating in a reverse pitch concept is you start with a built-in customer, right? You're not a solution in search of a problem. You have someone who has identified this as a challenge within their industry, or even within their organization. And so that, your background obviously was very well suited to that as a group of architects and the engineer that joined up with you. Alex and Cora, can you tell us just a little bit about your backgrounds, what you're studying, and how solving this problem, maybe you brought a unique perspective based on what you're studying, or if you found it kind of outside of your academic wheelhouse, but went after it anyways. what was that experience like?
Well, so I'm studying software engineering. So I don't think it, as much as I try to tie it back, I don't think it really does at all. It doesn't relate. So it was kind of outside my realm. But kind of like we said in our video, I feel like I have a lot of experience and interest and passion for that, kind of thing. I served a mission for 2 years for my church, and when I got back, I worked at a wilderness therapy company for at-risk youth and teens, and I was a mentor for foster kids. So even though my major kind of has nothing to do with any of that, it's a thing that I've kind of found a special place in me for a while, and that's what kind of drew us towards it.
Yeah. I am studying health psychology in school right now. So that kind of ties into it with the health aspect of the kids and the psychology. Like, this is really going to help them, and being connected to their community is important to them, especially at this age and with the struggles that they are experiencing at this time. So I guess we just both kind of had more of like a passion for it than anything else, but.
Yeah, as I'm listening to everyone here, in terms of having the subject matter expertise qualifying you to solve a specific problem, what I'm hearing is that's not necessarily the case. And in the case with HAUS, what I heard is, you were drawn to the problem with the most social impact at first, but then you pivoted to a problem that you had skill sets to match up against. So it's almost, very two different ways of approaching problem solving. I would want to think that you have to have either or, and I was hoping that either of you would say that, but I love to be proven wrong, and I'm learning myself every day. But that brings up something. It's something Nick said earlier. I don't know if this is a real term yet or not, but the student entrepreneur, right? Let's talk about that, because I know student athletes, and I'm aware of the programs and the organizations that are there to support them in their endeavors. We just came up with the student entrepreneur. The theme there is that I think as long as the entrepreneurial mindset and methodologies are being deployed, it almost doesn't matter if you have subject matter expertise. It sure helps, but I think these two teams are proof of that. So from a student entrepreneur point of view, and maybe we can talk in terms of HAUS first, because it's a business that you are running now, and albeit some of your team is focusing on school while you're running the business. But what's the life of I know the life of a student athlete somewhat, but what's the life of a student entrepreneur like? And are there any resources that you wish were there for you, just like the student athletes have available to them, to make your endeavors successful? Tell me about that.
That's another big question. In addition to doing my master's, I work for U of I at the integrated design lab. So we do, and my undergrad is environmental design. So I do a lot of energy efficiency work. And in terms of the construction industry, we work with architects in the area and really develop kind of energy efficiency solutions for them. So, I think that it really is just the support of kind of the folks I know in the construction industry and kind of like my coworkers and getting feedback in that realm. Like I said before, the Venture College has been incredible about connecting me to resources. And I just had a meeting yesterday with John Crouch, Nick, who is kind of new in the area, but he's excellent with marketing, which, and I think that's, I'm going to be taking part in the Venture College Incubator program this semester coming up. And I think that's going to be a really great resource for me, because I think a lot of it has to do with that, that customer feedback loop, but also, kind of this marketing side. And, I really don't have any background in that at all. With architecture, you present your work and you design your work and you kind of have to market yourself, but it's very different than a very physical solution that you're trying to sell to people. So I'm really looking forward to developing that skill set in the incubator program, and hopefully enough to take part in the Idaho Entrepreneurship Challenge in March. Yeah, I think the Venture College does a great job of providing those opportunities and those connections to move it forward.
I'm just here to say we did not pay Lyndsay to say all of this, but we might in the future. Yeah, I think, Lyndsay, that's a good point, that one that I just call out. Student entrepreneurs, Alex and Cora, anyone who's listening, the Idaho Entrepreneur Challenge is a good opportunity to take that next step with your business. Applications are open till the February 20th, and the competition will be March 31st. And there's $45,000 in prize money to be won. So please apply. And yeah, sorry, I know TM, you were continuing down that string of student entrepreneur and the both the upsides and challenges.
This is it, Nick. This is exactly it, Nick. I'm really trying to get to the what resources are available and where are some gaps. And as a student entrepreneur, what I heard, and I'm glad we're talking about the Venture College, is that the Venture College is a resource to students. And what I'm hearing is BYU students are going to participate in a Venture College program. Is that right?
U of I students, Lyndsay at U of I.
My point being, it's not a Boise State student. So that's also pretty cool that you were able to work with, students from other schools.
Yeah, and obviously Alex and Cora, if that's of interest, we're getting started next week, so you still have time to join up with the incubator, and obviously the Idaho Entrepreneur Challenge is open. But yeah, maybe Alex and Cora, just throw that question to you. You're working on this idea. You're in Rexburg. What are some of the challenges you may face as student entrepreneurs, and some resources that could help you take this idea or others further?
Well, I know for myself, I wish I could call myself more of an entrepreneur. A lot of times, I have ideas, and then I research it and it already exists somewhere. That's the hardest part, is coming up with something that someone else hasn't come up with before, or doing it better. And that's way cool, Lyndsay, that you're able to come up with that. And I think maybe another resource is a lot of the times things that I think of are out of my realm too, and just having access to knowledge on how to do things and to build things. Obviously, there's the internet, but it's hard to, shuffle and filter through all that information and just get to what you need. I'd say that was for me.
Yeah, no, kind of same, just contacts. And Alex says he's not an entrepreneur, but he's always thinking of ideas and things that he can make. So I would have to say that's not true. He's definitely an entrepreneur. But yeah, I think mostly just resources, as in people, as in expertise.
I do need to unmute before I speak. I am curious about the first problem that you picked, and you hit the wall. You said the INL with plastic. It's a pretty big problem to tackle. So we agree on that. But was there a significant point? Was there anything significant about when you reached that point and you're just like, we got to find something else? What were the sort of the telling signs, or were you just burnt out on not finding, paths to solutions?
Yeah, probably all of the above. I mean, we'd emailed dozens of companies who in the past have made changes in their policies to reduce plastic, and we probably heard back from like 2 of them out of like 30 plus. And the same with reaching out to politicians and lawmakers and people who would have more information and knowledge about those things. Like we were talking about earlier, the hardest part, I believe, is just getting that information and being able to have those connections. Because again, with all those, I probably emailed every mayor in Idaho and around, and probably heard back from 2. And just different people who would have the expertise and the power. It was just really hard to find that information. And it's way out of my realm. I'm studying software engineering. That doesn't relate to that at all. So I didn't have the knowledge, and it was really hard to find it. And we had a few ideas, but every time, I'd kind of researched that, I realized it's not really real. So on top of all that, the lack of knowledge and information, and then just kind of running out of ideas, that's what made us decide to go to something else.
Also, just the time, because we were coming closer to the deadline of when we needed things submitted, and
it's kind of the end of the semester too.
Yeah, we were busy, so just kind of all of it.
And out of curiosity, with your computer science background, are you focusing on software? Are you more focusing on maybe printed circuit board design, schematics? Like, what direction are you going into?
Yeah, so mostly it's software, but right now I'm doing an internship for Razorback Technology, and we're building sensors and kind of accessories to off-road vehicles. So it's more like embedded systems and circuit boards. So yeah, kind of all of the above.
Very cool. Yeah, that's awesome. You're doing an internship. We know those guys over there. The reason I even ask you that is, you know, the software engineers that I worked with in the past and I still work with today, they tend to have entrepreneurship built into their mindset. You know, if you are looking to, you know, design, you know, an embedded system for your client, you're always optimizing, you always, you know, there's trade-offs in your decision making, and you always are customer centric. You know, I'm really describing entrepreneurship in many ways. Yeah. And so, you know, while you may not think that you know, you have this entrepreneurial, you're not infected with the entrepreneurial bug, I think the subject matter that you're studying has those tendencies. You know, and as I'm thinking about that, I'm trying to think of, I don't know much about architecture, and I don't know any architects, but I also assume that, you know, in architecture, you're a problem solver in a way. Can you speak maybe to, you know, areas of architecture that are transferable to entrepreneurship that may not be obvious to me, not knowing much about your architecture?
Is that switching over?
Yeah, you're the only architect here.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very, you know, architecture is very much like problem solving and focusing in on, you know, whether it's the environmental issues, which is something that I, you know, with my thesis, I'm working on a lot. But really also the social component of that. So I think, and I mean, I think even for the HAUS challenge, like our team came from this place of, you know, we see the issue and it at first looks like this very technical issue, but at the heart of it, it's, you know, it's this constructability issue, but how that affects the homeowner and ultimately the client, which is the same way we deal with architectural issues. You know, when you're designing, you know, a community space or something like that, your client is that community. And so it really is kind of this customer focused and you problem solve starting from there. So I mean, I think that's kind of like how we ended up choosing what we chose, is that we still felt it was client focused, and the problem solving kind of unraveled from there. So
yeah, I think, you know, architects do bring that perspective of having to think about how someone interacts with the building, which you know, is obviously critical, and that lends itself to empathy for the end user. And, you know, I think software developers, software engineers, the same thing. And pulling on that thread a little bit, you know, both of you had either a person or an organization that had cited something as a problem, and maybe you had a video, a 1-minute video from that organization or 2 sentences from that organization. But tell us about how you went about trying to understand the problem more clearly, and, you know, moving beyond just a 1-sentence or 30-second video, you developed a better understanding of the problem, what that journey looked like, how you developed empathy for the end user. And maybe Alex and Cora, could you start and tell us a little bit about that experience?
So I guess in order to create the book that we were talking about, we had to learn a little bit more about Boise itself, because that's where the mails were being distributed. So we looked at a few of the different places in Boise, like the restaurants and things and the farms that were there to help us with that.
Yeah, and it was in the video too. She laid out parameters that had to be met. It had to be small, transportable, cheap, easy to replicate, easy to produce. Things like that. And it's important to have those listed and understand them, and mold your idea around that.
Gotcha. So in part, it was a better understanding of the environment that your end user was living in, and thinking about what they can learn about that environment. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
Lyndsay, you mentioned Eric Parrish, who was your problem sponsor. Tell us a little bit about how you went from a few sentences to your product, and you really dug into understanding the problem that he posed.
Yeah, so I think at the beginning, our whole team was like, oh, well, we could just, from all of these piles of trace paper and stuff that we had, we were like, oh, let's do like this, pop out panel, or maybe the whole wall pops out, or, so you can see everything, because, from the presentation, like you see the inside of walls and everything's just a mess. But Jess Strebe, who was our kind of advisor for the problem, with Eric being the one that posed the problem, they were both really helpful in kind of unpacking it. And something that the venture college kind of trainings had brought up was, you want to nail down actually like the pain point. And so that was something that actually took us, several days, because we're like, oh, well, you just want to be able to see everything, and there it is. But there's this very deep underlying issue of organization and kind of having an order to the way things are going in. And that applied to both the work on the job site and all of the trades coming in to put in those components, but also on the homeowner side of, when you want to integrate new tech and everything, what does that look like? And so, because things in the construction and tech and home industry are always changing. And so I think we really had to dive into like, when someone is on the job site or when someone is in the home, how is this going to benefit them, or what is their actual issue? And Jess really, she would send me emails with like 30 questions on them, and it was so daunting. But we would just, we would all sit there on Zoom with, beers and whatever, and just go through all these questions and just crank it out, and just really think about, me as a normal person in my house, how do I want to see that? Or, if we're out on the job site, what does that look like? So I think it was this major unpacking that we as architects, and, maybe Evan had more experience with this, but really nailing down the heart of the issue. So it's good.
Yeah, so you're describing the process of peeling the onion. And as you peel, you uncover things. It's pretty interesting to me that both teams in this case really took a more contextual approach to what appears to be a technical problem. And this is something you said earlier, Lyndsay, that the problem itself appeared pretty technical. And if there's a technical problem, the solution is usually technical and linear and probably already exists out there. But as you took a step back, you identified your customer who would actually pay for this, but then you also identified other stakeholders who would be impacted by this, who you would have to have on board to pull this off. So, as an architect, tell me a little bit about that process. It's impressive that, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, someone who studies a subject so technical, yet can take, empathetically a step back and do stakeholder management as far as the solution goes.
Yeah, so I think I think the context aspect of it, we were really very focused on, like you said, the user, and that was the way that we chose to unpack the problem. But and we did try like multiple things in a very technical sense. Like Evan had made up this amazing pop-out panel with everything specced out in like 3 days. He is awesome. And we were like, oh wow, like in SolidWorks, and like this is incredible, look at this. And then And then Jess had sent us this email, make sure you Google this stuff and make sure that someone hasn't already done it. And so we're like, oh, like pop out panel, whatever. It has been done a million times. People do it for a DIY project. And so we were all kind of like, took us a full day to like come back from that of like, wow, this really great idea that we did, and Evan spent all this time on it. Like, do we just ditch it? And so I think, and having a big team made this really possible for us, but it was really just about just trying and trying and trying and something. And then, with each time you try something new or have a new sketch on Trace or whatever, or are talking it through with your team, to just like recontextualize it. And you just have to put it back in, the everyday stuff with each trial. Because if you start getting away from that, it's really easy to take yourself out of it. And then, and then you've just solved this surface issue as opposed to the genuine problem. And so I think that Jess was just absolutely instrumental in us, thinking about this in a very focused way. So
you had me at pop-up panel. I thought that was the solution to it. I didn't Google it. But this, similar question for Alex and Cora. You mentioned earlier that, you had to learn more about Boise in order to, dive into the problem-solving aspect better. You identified restaurants. You mentioned farmers. Obviously, kids in school receive these meals. Were there any other stakeholders that you uncovered in this process, or did you uncover anything particular about any of the stakeholders that maybe was surprising as you were designing your booklet?
So by stakeholders, do you mean like the farmers and restaurants?
Yeah, for example, as I'm a parent, and if I put myself in the shoe of a parent whose kid gets one of these meals, unfortunately I'm not, am I a stakeholder as a parent? I just a question. But earlier when you said farms and restaurants and schools, I was like, oh, I really actually didn't think about restaurants per se. Yeah. But was there anything you uncovered as you were doing that customer discovery process that's worth sharing?
Yeah, well, to really, I guess, discover all the customers and the stakeholders, we just kind of thought out the life cycle of the meal, where it started, where it's put together, where it ends up, and, who benefits from it. And I guess, yeah, parents would be one of them. We didn't think of that too much. Really, we just, we thought of, there was the farm where it's grown, the restaurant where it's put together, the volunteers who assemble it and deliver it, the kids who partake of it, the families, and I guess the schools that participate in the program.
Yeah, I don't know if I have anything to really add to that. He pretty much got it. We were just trying to really show and help these kids really understand the blessing that they have to have these meals and all the people who have put a lot of hard work into it, and really connect them to their community so that they know where their food is coming from. They know who is helping them in this time in their life, and to really appreciate that.
One thing that seems to be a common theme here is, whether it's, a SolidWorks drawing that you have to abandon to move on to a different solution, or trying to tackle the INL plastics and then realizing it may be too big of an issue to really cover. You both teams have tackled really big and challenging ideas in a fairly short amount of time, and also had these ups and downs, right? Of like, you have an idea you think will work, and then you realize maybe it won't, and you've got to pivot and change where you're headed with it. And I think now, in particular, with the benefit of having some distance from the process, I'd be curious just to hear if you look back, what did you feel gave your team or your idea an advantage, and you felt like you did well? And what did you feel that if you could go back and start over, or give someone some advice that you'd do differently if you were to go through a reverse pitch again?
I think for us, I thought it was really interesting, Lyndsay, when she's talking about how she was in constant communication with, I can't remember the sponsor, whoever gave you the problem, but getting feedback and additional things from them. We, just apart from the video, we didn't have any contact with City of Good or Kathy. And I think it would have been really good to maybe reach out to her with some prototypes beforehand so we can keep improving them and meeting more of their needs rather than with what we just thought was good, but going back and getting continual feedback so we can make corrections.
Yeah, maybe one of the advantages we had in our idea is that it was really pretty simple and it was easy to execute, that they could really take it and run with it, whatever they wanted to do with it, and imply their own ideas and things like that. So it was just very simple and feasible and just all of kind of the qualifications that they had.
I think for us, what was done well was, that, the collaborative piece just between the team. We would, just meet every day and send texts and drawings and emails and things. And we were just kind of in this continual feedback loop. And so I think that was really helpful. And also we didn't stop iterating until we had the reviews for the pitch decks. Like we finished the pitch deck that day and like they were new drawings. And so I think that's something we did well. But if I had to go back, I would maybe put a limit on how much editing and drawing we were doing right up until the very end, because Reggie would text us again with a new drawing and we're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this in 3 hours? But I think that was, in a way our strong suit as well. But, the other piece of it was, I wish that we would have talked about the structure from the very beginning, because it was kind of something that we saw as this kind of add-on piece or part of the interior finishes or something within the wall construction. But, ultimately it needed to be structural and it needed to have a structural integration component. And I mean, in the end, that was almost the whole thing, was to be structural. And so, I wish we had had that conversation in the beginning, and maybe we did, and I just don't remember it. But I think that those were a couple things that would change if I had to go back.
So 2 common things there: simplicity, oftentimes can be your friend, right? It's, you can start with something very simple and build on it, but simplicity being a common theme. And then actually the time constraints almost sounded like a benefit, a feature rather than a bug, of only having 7 days or 3 weeks or whatever the case may be to work on it, forces you to ship. You're shipping your product by this date, and when there's really no negotiation around that. Be curious also to hear kind of just from the side of student entrepreneurs. When you mentioned structure, I thought actually, Lyndsay, you may be going in a different direction in terms of a business structure of how the team came together to say, this is a shared concept. Obviously, Alex and Cora like their idea so much, they just got married and said, let's move beyond just business and spend our lives together. But I'd be curious from the teams, how has that gone? Maybe Lyndsay, let's start with you. Just, if you do pursue this as a business, are you the one that's going to take it, and will the other team members join later as employees, advisors? How have you talked about, and it's okay if you're not willing to share, or if you haven't talked about it, that's fine too, just curiosity.
Yeah, so I mean, based on your suggestion, we just kind of had a sit down as a group and said, what are our goals? Where do we see this going? And, I guess what is our level of commitment? And let's just be honest with each other, because obviously architecture school can be very overwhelming just by itself. And most of us, have other jobs as well. But, ultimately we were just kind of like, I'm going to go through with the incubator program and just see where I can get it. I see potentially a future in this, but I think based on my education and kind of my ultimate goals, it might not be, you know, in such a direct way as like me owning this business after school. But I do think that my teammates are thinking about, you know, kind of jumping back in the summer. So it might be kind of like a switch off, but there's really no, you know, we decided from the beginning that there would be no like, I'm, you know, I have ultimate power or whatever it is, you know, we're just still, you know, a group of students, you know, working on a project. It's just elongated, I guess. So.
Gotcha. Alex and Cora, any thoughts to add there?
We were able to contact Kathy, who was the one who originally did the video, and just kind of talked to her about her ideas and our ideas, and just kind of see where it takes them. We just kind of gave them permission to do whatever they wanted, and they had some also great ideas to add to ours. So I'm excited, and I hope it helps them. I hope it really, and I hope it helps the kids too.
Cool. Well, thank you for, thanks for sharing that. And I guess to be clear, it does, that it's a big component of what that program can do to change kids' lives. You know, I think one aspect of this that has gone somewhat unmentioned, it's been referred to implicitly, but all of these sites take corporate partners, and you know, whether it's a building materials industry partner like Midwest and Eric Parrish, and should also recognize we had folks like Levi Smith from Franklin Building Supply, Boise Cascade Warehouser, a bunch of others. Or on the other side, City of Good. I know we've mentioned INL, the City of Boise, numerous others that pose these problems or challenges within their own industry. You know, I think Tim, hopefully you'd concur. This is a model that I think can help corporate and civic organizations tap into the ingenuity and creativity of students, right? And it can help to solve some of those big problems. I know also, at least from the Hacking for Home Building side, part of the motivation was not only to find solutions to big problems that the industries are facing, but also to get an industry in front of talented students. Because, you know, as was told me by the building materials folks themselves, they said, look, the way we build homes hasn't really changed in the past 50 or 60 years. One, so that's a problem. Two, when students graduate, not very many are thinking, boy, I can't wait to get into the building materials industry. But it's also an industry that has been referenced, is growing at a really rapid rate. And even, gosh, in the time when we started working with that group, and then between that time and October when we held the competition, I think the price of lumber almost tripled. So they were very, very busy. And obviously home building in this valley and across the country has been one of the few bright spots in an economy that's been really hindered by the pandemic. But I just wanted to recognize that, you know, our corporate partners are the other side of this equation, that supply the problems, and then obviously the creativity of the students makes it all go. But you know, I think part of this is to encourage more corporate partners to join up, to put your challenges forward. And Tim, I know at Trailhead, that's been you know, you obviously have great corporate partnership in the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem outside of the universities. Would just be curious to hear if you have anything to add on that front.
Yeah, I concur 100%. Look, this model, for one, I want to say, you know, we as in Trailhead, we did not invent this model. This model has been very active and successful in the United States for a really long time. The model being private industry coming to the table in a reverse engineering fashion, bridging the gap between them and talent. And depending on the motivation, and you just mentioned a few for the building industry. Where this model first came to fruition for Trailhead was when we executed the Trail Mix program. And in that case, Albertsons is the private industry partner. And so we looked at that and we thought to ourselves, well, what other industries can we export this to? And, I'm so glad that the Venture College focused in on home building. My question really to all the other private industry partners, current and or future at Trailhead is, what are the problems that you are trying to solve and that you're not focused on in the next year because you have other initiatives that take precedence? Or, what are those problems that you bang your head against the wall and you just can't make any progress and you can't acquire the solution? Sometimes a solution can be acquired and oftentimes it takes innovation. To get to innovation, that piece, the private industry partner, is an absolute, it's a must-have in this model. And so I know was it Franklin Building Supplies that did the hacking for homes? And obviously on the Youth Innovation Challenge, we had, various participants, including the City of Good. And really, it's one thing for the private industry partner to pose a question or a problem and give you a target as an entrepreneur. I think it takes it to another level when the private industry partner engages, makes available the resources, as long as it's reasonable, their subject matter expertise, knowing that it's sort of a collaborative effort to get to a win-win. And so, in TrailMix, I've experienced that very well, where Albertsons spends more time than they usually do with the vendors that they just onboarded to make sure that they're successful. And that's just one example. So yes, let's find the next vertical. Let's find the next industry partner that has problems to be solved. And we've just proven that this model can be pulled off right here in Idaho.
Yeah, thanks for that, TM. I know we're running short on time, so I think what I would do is just open it up to both teams and just, if you have any parting words for people that may participate in a reverse pitch competition as a student or as a corporate partner, any advice, tips, or tricks. We got, I don't think we've recognized, we got 2 winners here. We had a lot of people that participated, but this is the cream of the crop. You all were the ones that stood out above the rest and won. So I'm sure there's people that are looking to get your secret sauce and figure out how the next time this comes up, they can win. So maybe Lyndsay, if you would start and just reveal all of your trade secrets and how you won this competition.
Thanks, Nick. I think my 2 big things are just, get in communication with the people. Like we had great conversations with Eric and a very back and forth relationship. And when he saw our pitch in the end, he was literally like fist bumping in the background, and he was excellent to work with, and so was Jess. So I think just making those connections to help you move it forward, and also just, this might be very architectural advice, but just like get out your trace paper and your big marker and just like sort through it, because that was kind of, I think, the key for us. So.
One big thing that I found myself with this problem, and most problems I face, whether it's school assignments or things I'm doing on my own, is I just kind of obsess over it. I think about it all the time. I dream about it. I wake up, I'm like, oh, what if we did this and this? And it's just always on my mind. Just because it's fun, because if there's a problem, I want to solve it and I want to get the best solution. And it's so fun to think about it and think of everything that's possible. And it just fills me, it fills my thoughts, and just focus on it.
Yeah. Alex, I have to be honest, Alex did most of this project, and I helped here and there, but he was definitely the one thinking about it all the time and making all the plans and executing them. And so getting a good team is obviously important, and having people who really care about what they're doing and is willing to put in the work to do that, I think that is very important.
Cora, those are really wise words, and I think you're right. What Alex just described is something I hear from entrepreneurs all the time. So despite your seeming to suffer a little bit from imposter syndrome, Alex, I think you are an entrepreneur at heart. And I'd encourage you to keep working on that. And, you know, when you find a problem and obsess over it and it's your passion, those are the kinds of projects that usually lead to good things. And I've seen it with the HAUS team. They were so motivated, so organized. They were seeking out knowledge rather than waiting for it to come to them. And they were engaged 100% over a very strenuous week when it would have been easy to tap out and, you know, spend your time doing other things. But yeah, I think what I'd just like to say is for all of you, Alex and Cora and Lyndsay and the rest of the HAUS team, nice work. We really enjoyed seeing what you came up with. We really enjoyed working with you. And, you know, again, a shameless plug for you or anyone else that's looking to take your idea further as a university student. The Idaho Entrepreneur Challenge, if you go to the Venture College website, you can apply. Both of these competitions, the Youth Innovation Challenge at Boise Startup Week and the Hacking for Homebuilding Challenge, we'll do them both again this coming fall, which seems like a long ways away, but we'll be here before we know it. And we hope to see more engagement from the student and corporate side. I think there's a ton of opportunity here for both sides and really for Idaho to grow our entrepreneurial ecosystem. And, you know, just like TM alluded to with the You Lead Idaho program and the High School Idaho Entrepreneur Challenge, we want these folks that are entrepreneurially minded to start as early as possible and to build that skill set. So TM, I'll throw it to you for some closing thoughts here and signing us off.
Well, really the closing thought here is following yours, congratulations to both teams for winning. In terms of continuation, I think a closing thought that I want to leave all of you with is that we are here to support you. Trailhead, Boise State Venture College, many other stakeholders in our ecosystem in this state will make themselves available. And so for these two teams and other teams, you know, don't hesitate to reach out. If something seems out of scope, asking the question is always the right thing to do. And so I look forward to the day where we can help with this lift and help you in terms of business continuity to take it to the next step. Oftentimes, these endeavors are milestone based. You kind of make it to the first milestone and you take a breather, put your head down and go to the next milestone. Just know as you do that, there's organizations around that can help you with that and hold your hand. They can't do it for you, but we can be there to support you. And yeah, that's what I'm going to end on. We're here to support.
Thank you
Awesome.
both so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. You'll see an email that follows up with our next round of guests. But for February, we're going to be talking about some diversity, equality, and inclusivity issues in business. And we'll have our guests lined out on our follow-up email. But just appreciate everyone joining for this conversation today. Thank you to Lyndsay and HAUS and Alex and Cora with the City of Good program that you're supporting. And yeah, congratulations to both teams, and we hope to see great things from you very soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.